I would consider myself a pretty seasoned gamer. For as long as I can remember, I've been playing video games. And during this time, especially as I've gotten older, I've heard more and more people praise the Souls games. Whether that be the Dark Souls games, Bloodborne, or in more recent years, Elden Ring. Just that name itself carries so much weight behind it. Elden Ring has probably done more to get people into Souls-like games than any other that came before it. At least in my case, it's what pulled me into exploring this genre. As of writing the script, I've just finished the game, Killing Radagon. I haven't explored everything and I haven't even played the DLC yet, but despite that, this game has already had such a huge impact on me regardless. Elden Ring has changed how I view all games in general. However, in order to get into all of this, we first need to take a step back to when I first decided to try Elden Ring. So as I've said, I've heard such good things about the Souls games for a very long time. And while I did always think that the art direction and locations in the games looked cool, it was never really enough to pull me into trying them, because the main problem was the fact that I just didn't really understand them, or why they were so revered. I could understand the feeling that they gave you of overcoming an obstacle, but that in and of itself didn't feel worth it to me to spend hours of my time replaying the same boss fight over and over again. But eventually Elden Ring came out, and it got absolutely showered with praise over the years. So several years after its release, I finally decided to pick up Elden Ring during a sale. And oh man, was it a good choice. So the thing that made me eventually decide to buy Elden Ring was partly because I'd heard so many things about it, but mainly because of the world itself. While I didn't know if the gameplay would be for me, I could instantly tell that I would love the world of the game. I love fantasy overall, whether that's Lord of the Rings, Skyrim, my personal favorite Game of Thrones, or whatever else. I absolutely love fantasy. And medieval fantasy in particular. Mind you, at this point, all I'd seen of the game essentially was Limgrave. I didn't know just how big and diverse the world was, but Limgrave itself had already sold me on the world. So eventually, I booted the game up. And well, let's just say that my first hours were, interesting. So like with any game, I first went through the tutorial, and already here I was struggling quite a bit, given the fact that I died to this guy. But you know, I pushed through. And eventually I opened up this door to get my first look at Limgrave. And off the bat, right here, even though I'd seen parts of it online before, this first view of Limgrave, seeing it with my own eyes, it really is breathtaking. And look, the graphics are good, but they're far from the best I've seen. It's the art direction and absolutely beautifully put together world composition that makes it stand out so much. And already, right here, I knew that I made the right decision in trying this game out. But at this point, I'd only seen the game. I hadn't really played it yet. What I mean is, except for the tutorial, I had no experience with the gameplay, which you can easily tell by, for example, me trying to hit this enemy and ending up drinking a flask. The gameplay in this game was completely different to anything I've previously experienced. Unlike other games where, for example, if I'm playing a shooter, skill from another game can carry over, this was a completely new experience for me. So not really sure what to do, I ended up making my way towards Stormway Castle, because I was pretty sure that's where I was supposed to go. So I made it up there, trying to run past these guys, and after some trial and error, I eventually got to the castle itself, and I came face to face with Margit. And yeah, this did not go well at all. The combination of just not understanding the gameplay, while also being really underleveled, just made this fight impossible for me. And I understood pretty quickly that I wasn't supposed to be here yet. So I ventured off again and I started exploring the world. And honestly, the exploration itself I thought was pretty fun, but the problem itself just came back to the gameplay for me. I thought going around the world was really cool, but as soon as I found an enemy, I just got destroyed. But as you might have been able to tell by my gameplay so far, there's a really big problem. I just didn't understand how the game works. But I kept throwing myself at it, and I kept going and going, but I just didn't understand why I was having such a hard time. Then, about 7 to 8 hours into the game, I realized I was heavily encumbered. How I discovered that I was encumbered, which was something I didn't actually know about, was through a short clip that I got online that was from Elden Ring, where the player seemed to be dodging so much faster than me. So after a Google search, I realized that this was the reason I was having such a hard time dodging anything. And while yeah, I was still really bad, this was easily the biggest step up for me in enjoying the gameplay. Before, I just thought I was so incredibly bad, because others didn't seem to have this problem with dodging. At least I feel like I would have heard more about it. And while yes, I was bad still, the main problem was the fact that I was slow and got almost no distance due to the weight. After getting my weight down to medium roll territory, things became a lot more enjoyable. After this, I kinda just bounced around Limgrave, just trying to level up and explore the map in order to prepare to be able to fight Margit. I went back there a few times, but each time I just kept getting destroyed. So I kept leveling and leveling, and eventually I just thought, screw it, I have to go back and I have to beat him. And god, I hate this dude. The amount of times I went there and came back is way more than I would have liked. But eventually I got to this point where I felt that I was as ready as I could be, and that I just had to throw myself at him until I could kill him. and so that's what I tried. I fought him again and again and again, and slowly I did get better, but I kept dying regardless. I think at this point I didn't really understand that that's kind of the point with the boss fights. You're not supposed to be able to just go in blind and kill them. I didn't realize that just because I've leveled up doesn't mean that I should be able to just kill them after a few tries, and so I decided to try it the summons. I didn't really think it would make that big of a difference, so I thought I'll try it and then probably end up dying and keep going without them. But this is where I realized that this game has a secret difficulty setting, cause holy shit, summons made him an absolute cakewalk. I killed him pretty fast and without much trouble, and this made me feel pretty disappointed. Sure, I felt a sense of relief in a way because I was past him, but I couldn't shake this feeling of cheating almost. And like I failed because I didn't do it on my own. And I want to make it clear that I've no problem with people using summons. Of course, play the game how you want, but it simply wasn't my thing. And so after this, upon not receiving that sense of relief that I hoped I would get, this feeling that I'd heard so much about, I just closed the game and I didn't open it for months. I wasn't planning on taking a break, but days went past and honestly, I felt no real drive to get back into it. I felt as though I just gotten annoyed for hours without any real payoff. I do feel, from what I've read online, that these breaks in Souls games only to come back and get hooked seems pretty universal for these games. And as the months passed, I still didn't really understand Elden Ring at this point. But as time went on, I started to feel the want to dive back in, to try it once more. I wanted to understand Elden Ring, and oh my god, I'm so happy that I did. After coming back with a sense of motivation, I made my way through Stormvale, and while it was a bit of a struggle at times, I eventually made my way to Godric, and once again the challenge was on. But this time I felt a lot more confident. I knew that it was gonna take a good amount of times, but I felt that I would get him eventually. I felt like I was at a good level to beat him, and I just had to keep going. So after a good amount of runs and frustration, learning his moves better and better, I eventually killed him. And this was my first taste of that satisfaction that comes with killing a boss, after spending time dying over and over, learning their moveset, and it did feel satisfying, but not to the point of making me hooked on the game or the genre. It was just kind of a first taste. I think part of why this didn't really get me excited in the same way that some of the later bosses did, was most likely because I just didn't really find the Godric fight to be that interesting. I don't know if this is a hot take, don't get me wrong, he looks awesome, but the moves he made didn't feel that new or special compared to Margit. However, the turning point for when this game really got its hooks into me came when I was in the next area, Liurnia of the Lakes. Once again, upon entering Liurnia, I was just blown away. Cause I mean, just wow, look at this, it's beautiful. But a really special thing here is that there's a certain boss that I want to talk about. Renala, Queen of the Full Moon. From what I've seen online, she's not considered a particularly hard boss, at least if you're playing a melee or in particular strength build, but for me she was definitely a problem. On a replay, I don't think I would find her that hard, but this first time I did struggle with her a lot. Not with the first phase of course, which after getting past made me think that she was gonna be a cakewalk, but the second phase sure did kick my ass a good amount of times. And this is where Elden Ring finally grabbed me, because every time I died, I realized that I learned something. And during this time it took all the way to run back to her, which was very tedious though, I'll be honest. It allowed me to reflect on the fight each time, and try to figure out what to do better next time. I spent this time not just mindlessly running back, but contemplating on the fight itself, on her moveset, and how next time I was gonna do this other thing instead. I was putting my full focus into this, so that I didn't have to run up this stupid path another time, and I didn't have to spend more time during that boring first phase of her fight. I wanted to win. And slowly but surely, it did feel like I was making progress after each death. And while dying was of course frustrating, here it felt different, because I felt the progress. I felt that each time I died, I was learning something and I was getting better. And while death was still failure, making it further than last time felt like a win, like I was improving upon myself. And eventually, when I finally killed her, I felt this amazing sense of relief. And this is the exact moment that Elden Ring, and honestly the Souls genre in general, clicked to me. I realized that this is what it's all about. The relief I felt about not having to spend any more time mindlessly fighting her in that first phase again, and not having to run up those stairs another time. And with that relief, I also felt pride. Cause sure, I didn't do it on the first or second or third try, but I did it. I learned, I got better, and I overcame the enemy. And this made all that frustration so worth it, because that struggle is necessary in order to get that sense of accomplishment later. One can't exist without the other. While I had previously not understood why people spend hours fighting the same boss, this is when it clicked for me, because fights in Souls games aren't like fights in a lot of other games, where the end goal is all that matters. In Souls games, spending that time learning the moveset of an opponent and then overcoming that opponent just by practicing is what feels so good. It's such a rewarding feeling when you can feel how you're actively improving. Those hours fighting the boss are what matters most. The journey itself is what's most fun, and then you get that reward of relief. But in a way, you're not just fighting the boss to beat them, although that's the end goal. You're fighting them so that you can improve yourself, to see that progress in yourself, and know that next fight you're not gonna struggle as much, or at least you're not gonna struggle with the same kind of fight. At least that's how it is for me. That's why I prefer to just throw myself at the boss time and time again until I eventually just get good. Sure, I could go away and level, and yes, I did have to do that a few times during the game, but for the majority of the game, if I faced a boss, I stayed there until the asshole was in the ground. I didn't get extra health by the game to make things easier or some secret damage boost. It's all down to me as the player, and that makes the accomplishment feel so much better. I feel like in a lot of other games, the goal of the boss fight is just to beat them. The actual fight itself might be interesting, but it's not the thing that you care that much about. It's about getting to the next goal. But in this game, it's different. Learning to beat them is what's actually fun. And after that point with Rennala, my mentality about the game completely shifted. It wasn't just that I got Elden Ring, it's that I finally understood what people meant when they talked about Souls games and how it's completely different from normal gaming. Because from this point, every part of the game started feeling richer and more interesting. Every time I came across some little boss, it became a new opportunity to test myself once again, to refine what I've been working on and learn more. It felt like as the world itself grew around me, so did I as a player. And this part with Rennala is really where Elden Ring changed the way that I look at games as a whole. Most games just teach you what you need to know quickly. They handhold you as they walk you through their mechanics, set their expectations of what you should be able to do pretty early on, and then that pace is kept through most of the game, with bosses scaling with you. But that mostly just means that they become tankier and deal more damage to you, to keep up with the fact that you're leveling up your stats and weapons. And with that, you the player as well settle into a certain playstyle and rhythm. We never really need to adapt all that much, and you usually just roughly know what to expect from future fights. The fights themselves never really change that much or force you to adapt. Instead, the health bar usually just gets bigger. So you get to a point where you kinda just plateau, since there's not a lot you can improve on. And even if you can, there's no real point to it because the enemies are the way that they are. Sure, there's definitely exceptions, like games with really hard modes such as The Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2 with their respective grounded modes, which force you to change your playstyle to a more slow and calculated way, since you're limited on resources and information, as well as your enemies being more aware and stronger. So if you're more of a run and gun player, you have to change up your playstyle a lot, since that works on easier difficulties but not harder ones. However, besides that, it's mostly the same. And once you've made that shift to the slower approach, you kind of already bridged that gap. And if you look at the majority of games, their hard modes are usually just making the enemies tankier, which forces you to change up your playstyle a bit, but it doesn't really do a lot. And once you've made that shift to the slower approach, you kind of already bridged that gap. In Elden Ring, however, the game refuses to let you plateau. It demands more from you all the time, with different enemies and bosses having wildly different ways of fighting. With each boss, you reset back to the basics. You keep your skills of dodging and reading attacks as well as you can, for example, but each time you have to learn a new moveset of the boss, the difference in phases, what they're weak to, and so on. So while you might have reached your 100% capacity, as to say, once you reach a new area, you reset down to say 30% again. Now sure, it will still depend wildly on how much you played Souls games in the past and how good you are, since being really good at the fundamentals will of course take you a long way. But now I'm focusing more on myself and the average or below average player, which I would call myself here, mainly since I'm very new to Souls games. So that's the experience that I had, at least. I think that another part of what made me like Elden Ring so much is that while I might get mad when I die, especially when I screw up big, losing can still mean progress. The game might not progress, but me and my skill does. In most games, dying just feels like a punishment, and like you're wasting your time. But in Elden Ring, a lot of the time when you die, you can still feel proud and content with the performance you put in, because you might have gotten further than last time, or really close to killing them. And you feel that, okay, I've got this first part locked down, so I can start focusing on the next. I also think a large part of this coming to acceptance with dying comes down to the reputation of the Souls games. I knew going into Elden Ring that I was going to die, and that I was going to do it a lot. That's a lot different from most other games, where dying isn't really expected in the same way. So when you go in with the knowledge that you will die, it makes it feel less punishing each time you do. And that progress that you make is what keeps driving you forward. In a lot of other games, I could be content with just cheesing an area, or getting by it in some easy way. But in Elden Ring, I didn't want to just make it forward with some cheap tricks. I wanted to actually feel like I earned my progress in it. I think that's also a big reason why I really did not like using the summons. I wanted to do things on my own, and feel that the reason I won the fight wasn't because of me taking the help of NPCs or magic summons, but because I got better by myself. I'm okay with using things like items to help me, cause that's still me doing things. But using summons or NPCs just didn't feel rewarding to me. That's probably something I'll do when I replay the game, where I just want to see how fast I can kill the bosses, because at that point I've already managed to win once on my own. I've conquered those bosses. And along the journey of the game, I realized that my mindset had shifted a lot. In the beginning, while fighting Margit, and even in a way when fighting Godric, I felt like I was trying to pass by this immovable object, and I found it difficult to keep trying, mainly because I didn't really feel like I was improving, since I didn't really have a grasp of the game, and also because Margit is the first boss that you fight, and I felt that if I struggled this much with him, then I would be screwed when it comes to the rest of them. Now, as it turned out, this wasn't the case at all, but it did feel like it at the time. However, once I'd gotten over that hurdle of discouragement and realized that through beating boss after boss, that if I put enough time in, I could beat them, it changed my mindset. So when I eventually got to some later points with some real challenges, such as the Fire Giant, Malekith, and Godfrey, just picking some that I found to be challenging but also were challenging for different reasons and required adapting, well, I got absolutely stomped by them time and time again, especially Malekith and Godfrey. I felt like if I just got a little bit better, I could win. I could feel that victory, and if I just kept going, eventually I would grasp it, and that's exactly the feeling that I was after. And at this point, I didn't just understand Elden Ring and Souls games, I started to love them. Now, I'm taking a bit of a break with Elden Ring before going for the DLC, and I'm planning on playing the Dark Souls games in their respective order, since I feel like I will have a completely different experience now with them, compared to if I would have tried them before. But I will most definitely keep going with Elden Ring at some point. But I also want to explore how Elden Ring didn't just change the way that I view Souls games, or other really hard challenging games. It completely changed how I view games in general. Like I said before, I just didn't really understand the appeal of a game whose main purpose was to be as hard as possible. Although you can make a case for Elden Ring not falling into that category, since it almost has built-in difficulty scaling due to the summons for instance. But regardless, sure, I could get to the satisfaction of winning a fight eventually was probably good, but I didn't understand how spending hours in what I perceived as being wasting time could be worth it, especially when as the average person, you're so limited when it comes to time. I mean, if I look at myself for instance, I try to juggle work, socializing, gaming, and of course making YouTube videos. So if I don't make any in-game progress while gaming, I thought it would feel like a waste. But like I said, I realized that the progress in these types of games instead come from the progress that you make as a player. You might not have beaten the boss in this session, but you got real close. And you know that next time you might have a real shot. You improved as a player and you had a good time. So this honestly changed my mindset when it comes to other games as well. I've never been the guy who in single player games chooses the hardest difficulty. I've only ever done it on reruns of games I love because I want a bit of a different experience or to get an achievement. Since games for me are mostly about having fun in the gameplay and experiencing the story. Don't get me wrong, I love a good challenge and I'm a pretty competitive person, but for me that was usually contained to multiplayer games, where my skill was tested against other players, and the point itself was the competitiveness. I've always been a competitive person, but that didn't really translate into single player gaming that much for me, since I was just competing with myself. But since playing Elden Ring, I've come to look at other games differently. By going back and playing some single player games, like for example one of my favorite games ever, The Last of Us Part 2, I've come to really like playing the hardest difficulty. Sure, that's partly because I've played this game several times, but it's also because I enjoy the challenge more now and improving in single player games. And when playing games that are my first time around, I feel like I don't get annoyed as easily, and I don't just instantly blame the game in the same way, at least not as fast. Of course, sometimes that stuff gets to you though, and instead just accepting the defeat, going again and wanting to improve. I come to see that you lose screen as experience rather than defeat in the games that I play. Now sure, some games I really just want to experience the story in still, and I will get pissed off when I lose, but I feel like playing Elden Ring has definitely broadened my horizons and made me look at games through a different lens. With time and as you get older, games start to lose that magical feeling that they had as a kid. At least that's the case for me, with games becoming more and more of the same in a lot of ways. But playing Elden Ring and learning to appreciate a new aspect of games got me some of that kid feeling back again, no matter what the game is that I'm playing. I remember distinctly one moment from my childhood where I was playing Lego Harry Potter and got stuck on a certain part for ages, but instead of just becoming mad and frustrated, I remember that I thought it was fun to try and figure out what I had to do, even though I had to spend a large amount of time and energy on it. So playing Elden Ring generally reminded me of how I used to play games as a kid, where getting stuck didn't just make you feel frustrated, instead it was part of the fun, where discovering something on your own felt like this little magical victory, and Elden Ring brought that feeling back for me, and that's how Elden Ring changed the way that I view games. That's how Elden Ring changed me.